All right, we are live. Dan Uyemura, my friend, welcome back to the Future of Fitness.
Thank you for having me. Let's chat about some fun stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, man. It always is. And I really enjoy our conversations, always very insightful, just with your experience within the industry, the amount of gym owners and practitioners that you talk to on a day-to-day basis, your understanding of fundraising and software and technology. It's a really nice intersection and a lot of stuff I want to cover with you today, if time allows. I think some of the newer products that PushPress has come out with, as far as the insurance and how that falls in line with your ultimate mission of really protecting gym owners and being one point of contact for them. I think it's a really great value proposition that you guys offer. Love to talk to you about artificial intelligence, the rate of the growth, if our industry is ready for it or not. Something that probably by the time we record and publish will be outdated, but we'll give it a shot anyway. Your thoughts on CrossFit? You have a very strong connection to the CrossFit community, and there's a lot of changes that's happened at HQ, as they say, over the last 6 months or so. And it sounds like you're pretty optimistic about what's going on there. But first, let's start with this, man. You've been out and about within the world of media, and you've been telling your story. And it's not the usual story. It's very memorable about kind of the impetus for how you got to where you are and how PushPress started. And I'll let you kind of give a quick synopsis of it, but I want to understand from your perspective, not exactly what it is that you're telling about the story, but why you're telling it and how doing something like that, which leaves you a bit vulnerable, affects you both personally and professionally, and for that at PushPress, and why it's important to tell your story. So give us some insights onto that, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, actually, I think that's I've told my story probably a dozen times now, and no one's asked me why. And I think the why is actually more important. That's cool you brought that up. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I'll give you the bullet point version of the story. I was one of the, I take full ownership of it, but during the era of opiates, I got addicted to painkillers. Being addicted to painkillers usually leads you to finding uppers to regulate your downs with your ups. Once you're on uppers, you need to find a way to go to sleep. So you're finding some other way to go to sleep. For me, it was 6 packs of beers. And I basically drugged and drank myself into quite a bit of life problems, became a felon, and had to make a hard life choice of like, do I go left or right? And I decided to try and clean up my life. I didn't identify as a bad person. It was my first, I guess, stint in making the wrong choices for an extended period of time, and found my way into some recovery programs. And that's the recovery programs is kind of the why, right, of me telling the story. And here I am today, which is, 12, 15 years later. So the interesting thing is, like, and this goes for fitness, like people in fitness are like, oh, well, I want to lose weight. And, my response to that is, because everyone wants to lose weight in a month. And my response is like, yo, you got out of shape and out of weight over 10 years of making bad choices. You can't undo that in a month. Like, it's going to take another 10 years of making the right choices to undo what you did. And that was kind of what the funny thing with drugs is. You can ruin your life in 3 months, and then it takes 10 years to undo it. And that's what happened to me. But yeah, I went through the recovery program. I listened to a lot of people. I just shut up and listened. And what I heard consistently was just, don't worry about 10 years from now. Just do the right thing right now in this moment. Don't even worry about later today. Just do the right thing right now, this moment. And if you make that choice every time, sooner or later, you're going to realize, like, you're going to turn around and not even realize where you are anymore, because you're going to be in the right place. And that's exactly what happened to me. So the reason I tell the story is 2 reasons. The altruistic reason is there's somebody out there right now who's listening to this who has a skeleton in their closet or something that they're ashamed of, that they're hiding. And the reality is, like, the reason I went down the path of drugging and all this is I was hiding a bad relationship. I was hiding being unhappy in my job. I was hiding a lot of things. And what I learned in the recovery rooms is when you're open and honest about the things that you're hiding, you remove all of the inner things that you blame yourself for that create the situations that make you do the wrong things. The selfish reason I do it is being open and honest about your problems is what keeps you straight. So if I'm not out here saying what my problems are and I'm hiding them, then I will find myself in a corner having a drink when I shouldn't or doing something wrong when I shouldn't, because it's all something I'm hiding, right? So it actually snowballs into your own problem again. So you learn all that in the recovery rooms. And like I said, I just shut up and listened, and it's worked. So why mess with it?
From and it's impactful. I just want to say that, like, some of the podcasts you've been on, I talked to the podcasters like Travis Barnes from Overcomers podcast. He's got his own backstory of, spending some time in jail and his renewed, you know, faith in his religion. Eric Corum, you guys did a 2-part series on the Blueprint podcast, and I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he was just blown away with your knowledge and the story that you were willing to tell. So I think there's also, from a professional standpoint, I mean, there's got to be a lot of value. I think people must resonate with you more powerfully than if I just got onto an interview or a media opportunity and I kind of gave my generalized story, like, born and raised in Northern California, played sports, business, blah, 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 right? But when you throw a story like that out there, and this is what I'm trying to get, is to encourage people to tell stories that maybe they think they shouldn't tell. Like, it's really kind of a right hook to the audience. It's like, whoa, that guy just say what I think he said. So, from a business perspective, have you noticed anything, like any value in being so upfront and authentic?
100%. Yeah. I think a lot of people expect everyone to be polished and perfect. But if there's one truth in this world, is everyone is unpolished and unperfect, and everyone has imposter syndrome, and everyone is afraid of all the same things that everyone else is. And literally the only way to get past it is just to be yourself and be true to yourself. I learned pretty early, like when I became the CEO of this company, massive imposter syndrome, never had done this before. And, like so much learning in front of me. So and I'm a learner. I like learning. So I just bought books, consumed everything. And one of the resonating, I guess, topics that I saw a lot was the best leaders are empathetic and vulnerable. And if you really want someone to pause and listen to you and follow what you're thinking or where you want to go, you actually have to put yourself at their level and not dictate, not be standing on a pedestal doing it. And so, while I don't go around in team meetings and talk about my history, I'll be the first one to say I made a mistake or where my flaws are. I have a whole document that I put out to the whole team on how to work with me, and it's nothing about all my flaws. These are the things you have to navigate because I am stupid in these ways, right? Yeah, it's literally called How to Work with Dan, and it just talks about how I have ADD and how I get distracted and how I could lose focus. All the things that they need to know because they're going to work with me and be like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? But
that's amazing.
What I found is like when people read that, then they come into the meeting and be like, oh, well, my cousin has ADD too. So like, I get it. It's like you've level set all this stuff and you're a human being to them again. So yeah. Long story short, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I'm going to write my wife an SOP on how to be married to me and see if that helps. I feel like that would be...
You should do? You should have her write it at the same time and see where they line up.
Yeah. We'll come back to that one in a year. I think that's really interesting. So I think having that approach and just being very authentic and open with people isn't like no, you're not asking for anyone to be like, oh, poor Dan, he went through this hard thing. You're just being like, no, this is a shit. This is who I am. This is what makes me up. I'm imperfect and I'm very human. So yeah, I really appreciate it. I would really encourage, founders, executives, leaders within this industry to, like, if there's things you think you need to tell people that will make them understand who you are and how to work with you and why you do what you do. I think it's a really very powerful, man. Very good.
Here's another really interesting concept. And again, came out of the Rooms of Recovery that I think is worth mentioning. We go through life and we are taught, oh, don't talk about how much you make. Don't talk about these things. Don't talk about any of the imperfections. In fact, we're taught, like, when someone comes over, clean up your room. Like, this isn't really my room, but today it is because you're coming over and I'm going to pretend like I have a clean room every day. Like, these are the social implications that we're taught, right? The reality is, the more truthful and honest you are, and I'll give you an anecdote specifically into this, the more truthful and honest you are about yourself, about who you are and what you do and what you stand for, and you're real, not only does that protect you from doing stupid things in the dark rooms when you're hidden because you're ashamed of yourself, but it also creates a self-regulating filter on who will even want to be around you, which just makes your life easier. You know what I mean? And here's an example. So I have this whole history, which for most people who live, who see life a certain way is like, oh, dude, like I don't want to be around that person. Probably I don't want to be around them either. That's fine. When we raised our Series A at PushPress, they do crazy due diligence, including background, criminal checks, da, 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 da. And my whole record is expunged, it's hidden, etc. Unless you go certain routes. And I think they went to certain routes and they're like, hey, we need to talk about this thing. And I was like, oh, I actually meant to tell you about this, and then I just told them the whole story. And they're like, okay, cool, just want to check. But if they would have been like, oh, that's a problem, then I'm invested in and married to the wrong person or the wrong company for life, forever. And you know how much trouble that would have caused? So those things are really good to get out and open, especially when you're starting relationships. Man, you should have heard all the stuff I dumped on my wife when I met her. Like, I have kids. I'm divorced, but the divorce isn't done yet. I'm still technically married. I have a felony. I'm on probation. I'm doing community service. Like, we had to sit down like at Chipotle, and I did all of that. And she was like, "Okay, I need like a day or two to think about all this at this point." But I'm like, "Hey, if you don't like that, I'm just giving you the information, and you can bounce right now."
Yeah.
But to be honest, you know what she told me? She's like, I've never actually dated someone who told me about all their problems on like the third date and gave me the choice to make the decision. So I want to see where this goes. And it actually worked. I'm married to her now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, the truth will set us free, right? There's a reason why these cliches are around, and they're said so often, is because they're really true. So that's awesome, man. And cool. Well, let's get into some other really industry specific stuff. But thank you for sharing that. CrossFit. So been around for a while. I don't know the exact numbers, right? Possibly you could provide some insights. I did a quarterly report not too long ago with Juliet Storen and Alex Alamastiano. We covered CrossFit, our opinions. We used some of the stats that you provided as well as some of the stuff from Two Brain Business Report. And so Don Fall's the new CEO, newish, right, within the last year or so. But you've been having a lot of conversations with them as it goes with your role within the community. There's always a lot of smoke around CrossFit HQ, right? So always a lot of mixed messaging. There seems to be a lot of change. It's one of the world's biggest fitness brands to date, right? Still the most recognizable across the planet. It's got a lot going for it, but a lot of people feel like maybe it's on the decline. So what say you, like with recent changes over the last 6 months, give us some insights, like what's going on there? What makes you more bullish on the new direction?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm probably standing alone right now, but I also have maybe a little bit, I wouldn't say more information, but at least a little bit more insight than the average person does.
Sure.
There's been no bigger, well, I wouldn't say no bigger. There's been plenty of big critics of CrossFit. I've been a critic of CrossFit forever. For all, it's easy to armchair quarterback. And part of this might be as I've ascended and become the CEO of PushPress, and PushPress is becoming a bigger company. I understand armchair quarterbacking is so easy when you don't understand what they're going through, what the pressures are, all that. But that all being said, I had given up on CrossFit personally, and I was the biggest CrossFit homer in the era that you were in it and everything. Recently, we've been having discussions with them off and on about different topics, and I've noticed a complete 180 in how they're approaching things. And this is what I can speak to, because I don't know what's going on behind that firewall, but I do know the people that I interface with have never talked about gym owner value, understanding how to drive members into gyms, building processes that create more value for gym owners. Like, I've never heard these phrases spoken in their vernacular until recently. And so I know somewhere in the organization, from the top down or the bottom up, there is a movement of what we need to do is actually make these gyms more successful, and let's focus on that, which, like I said, I don't think I ever felt before, and now I do. I know they're on the right track.
That literally, I just cheered. I think your head was down, but I was like cheering as you were saying that, because the one thing that I think I summarized after my conversation with Juliet specifically was like, where can CrossFit do better? I'm like, they just need to help affiliates make more money. That's it. Like, that's fundamentally the biggest problem. I'm not saying that's an easy problem to solve, but if you pour some resources and some time into it, you could probably move the needle. I mean, can you give us insights like how do you do that? On a global scale, how do you start to move the needle?
I think the is so low hanging for them. I don't want to, I can't speak to, or I don't know like how they're thinking about it. I can surmise what I think, but put it this way. If you get to a point where a small mom and pop gym that's, operating out of Indiana looks in the mirror and goes, I can do better than CrossFit can to represent what I do to the industry, to the industry, like the fruit is on the ground at that point, right? Because they, operationally speaking, experience speaking, network scale, efficiency speaking, leverage speaking, in every business direction and vector, there's no way that a single gym should be able to out operate CrossFit. And yet thousands of gyms believe that to the tune of de-affiliating. So I do think like I've seen in field a circling of the wagons moment. I feel and see that they're thinking about how can we structure our service and product offering in a way that not only increases the likelihoods that our gyms succeed and or thrive and or win, but proves it to them. Right. And I think that mindset is the foundation for actually doing what they have to do, as opposed to, it did feel before like they were running after 100 different directions. There was no clear focus. And as a result, the games started to suffer. They're like less L1s were being done. The affiliates were being left hanging to dry. Like everything suffered in the CrossFit ecosystem at that point. And there does seem to be a focus now.
Yeah, I didn't de-affiliate. I think it was around 2015. I didn't de-affiliate. I just kept the affiliation, but I changed the name on my
And
doors
hit it.
and hit it.
That's what we did.
Yeah, and I just said, powered by CrossFit or whatever in the small print. But the stuff that got me was just some of the PR moves that were I just couldn't agree with. Like certain things they would say or do, and I'm like, why are we? Like, I understand that this is part of this, biker gang mentality of HQ, right? The kind of the old school mentality of Glassman and the whole crew, that is kind of an FU to everybody else and throwing the finger up to, the traditional industry or people in or around that and kind of intentionally being offensive. But I was like, gosh, man, you're just making our job at the affiliate level so much more difficult at times.
Yeah, I think a couple points to that. I think that's the big point, is making political statements. In my opinion, there is almost no place in business for it until you get rise, and maybe CrossFit is at this point, or they thought they were, when you rise to the point where like a Google kind of has to make social statements because they're, or some companies might feel obligated to because they have such a voice in the world. But I mean, I would have been all for, hey, Glassman, go after Coca-Cola, go after Big Soda, go after, broken science. That's all in your wheelhouse. And those are things you should be doing. I just don't know, like, does it help a CrossFit affiliate to expose, a left or right leaning philosophy? Because they have responsibilities to affiliates too. And people associate every affiliate with the statements that come out of CrossFit. So that's, I think, where they went wrong. I don't think Glassman's apologetic for it. But at the same time, it's like, I think you have to understand these philosophies when you start the business and just say like, hey, we lean left or right. And if you lean the other way, don't become a CrossFit affiliate to start. But to hurt someone's business over it, I think is reckless.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, man. Well, that's encouraging. And like I said, I'm planning on getting Don Fall on the podcast this year at some point. So I'm really keen to get his insights and what his vision is, because really cheered for it, man. I'm critical, I think, similar to you. I'm probably critical in ways because I love it and I want it to be better. And I do think it is, I mean, the brand's amazing. Like, you go all over the world, people know CrossFit, right? The core fitness enthusiasts, as I call them, like, are die hard in CrossFit. My wife still CrossFits 4 days a week, been doing it for a decade, and her community is still very strong. But same thing is like the affiliate owner also has a physical therapy clinic that he runs out. That's where he makes all the money. The gym is just out of passion. So we got to get at this point of like, you people are running it for passion and making no money and having a second job to actually like, okay, let's make this a career. And that's what I like.
If I can pass on some advice to Don from me, not that my advice means anything really in his world, but what I would like to see from Don is him to get on a soapbox and speak more, because nobody really knows. I don't know what he's thinking. I should, right? You should know what he's thinking. It should be loud and clear in the market. Every affiliate should know what CrossFit stands for at this point. And I don't think I've seen Don speak once, to be honest. Like, And granted, he's going to have to speak 10 times for me to catch him once. But the point is, like, I don't think he's been out there enough, and I think he needs to be out there more.
Yeah. Well, I'll see what I can do. I'll let you know.
At least he's coming on your show, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, nothing's confirmed yet, so I don't want to tease anything out, but I coming in.
Don, if you're watching this, get on the show.
Yeah, please do, man. I want to talk to you. The insurance offering. This was pretty cool. I've talked to you about it a couple times. I've heard you talk about it as well. You guys made a pretty big move. It was like 2 months ago, and you started offering insurance to gyms. And I think that really, I want to get your take on, of course, like, what is the offering? How are you doing it? Why is it better? But also, how does that fall in line with the overall mission of what you guys are doing at PushPress? Because I do love what you guys are doing, is simply, advocacy for independent gym owners. I think is a really powerful statement and a really strong mission that drives a lot of value with what you guys do. So yeah, tell us about the product and offering and why you did it.
Yeah. So, I mean, this really goes back to why I started PushPress. And one of the reasons I started PushPress is because I got lied to and ripped off by a payments company who ran the software that we used. And they told me it was 1.9% on my payments processing rate. I was really paying 4.8 at the end of the day. They basically hit a bunch of fees all over the place. And I was none the wiser until a banker showed me otherwise. This predatory activity, I think, happens in SMB small businesses across America. And my stance was we would protect gyms from this, because you can't really necessarily trust the companies. And I understand we're a company too. And this is why it's part of our founding ethos. And, if we differ from that, we will have a revolt within our employees, because that's what we hire people against. But protect gym owners from this type of behavior. And I'm not saying that this is or isn't happening in every aspect of, the services that are helping gyms. I'm not saying that is or isn't happening in insurance per se, but you do need somebody to keep people honest. And we do need somebody to make sure that things are built from a gym owner perspective first. And that is part and parcel of the core cornerstones of what we're doing here at PushPress. Everything we build will be from the lens of doing it right for the gym owner and then for the gym member first. Right. And if you follow me or listen to what I'm saying, it's like company revenue and, the things that the company gets out of it will always follow if we do the right things first and we know how to present it to the market. And I think gyms should do the same thing. Like, focus on what you're doing for your customers, focus on how you present that to the market, and your money will come. But the problem is so many people are focused on my money first that they're doing all the wrong things inside their business to try and back their way into money. So that's kind of where we stand with the insurance thing. It's been pretty cool. We got 15% of our clients. I mean, we soft launched it with like an email and a couple of social media posts, and 15% of our clients got a quote. And almost 100% of those quotes would have saved them significant amount of money. So it's been a good launch so far.
Yeah. Well, from our conversations, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, one of the goals of what you're doing with your software and just your service overall, your company, is like, you want to help gym owners save time by kind of being one point of contact for all the million things that they have to concern themselves with. So, I mean, that obviously sounds like this aligns with that. Is that still kind of the course that you guys are taking? Is that, explain that a little bit better than I did.
Yeah. So one angle of it is making sure that there's somebody who's building services and programs from a gym owner centric point of view. The other angle is when you talk to gym owners, and you were a gym owner, I was a gym owner, there's so many things to do in a day. Every new business that you have to interact with turns into lost days. Research, checking out their reviews, figuring out how to pay them. Oh, shoot, they want their payment on, this way, and I don't do it that way. I've got to go set up a Zelle account or, whatever it might be. There's just so many things that happen for every single person you have to deal with, that one of our value props is, and on top of that, like, because we know insurance is a good one. Let's talk about that. Like, because we know the attendance history of members, we know how many members you have, we know the type of gym you are in, we know so much about this business, like the insurance risk becomes less for us because we have so much insight into what's happening inside the gym. And this is like, I guess if you want to talk bigger picture, what our goal is to lower the cost of gym ownership, both in terms of money, time, effort, and raise the value of the services we provide, because we have a native integration we know too much about the gyms. We know so much about that it creates kind of an unfair advantage for us to help them in other ways. So yeah, insurance was a test in that direction. And I think that test was very successful.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it's been really well received. Off the top of my head, too. I mean, obviously, we talk about CrossFit. You guys work with a lot of that community. Is in your 4,000 gyms you have on your platform, or however many it is now. But martial arts, man, that seems to be really like it's. I'm starting to see more and more, and it's been like this for a little while, but it seems to keep accelerating. Like BJJ, MMA, like all these different martial arts gyms. Like, how is that segment of the market doing from your viewpoint?
I think that is definitely a new growth area of the marketplace. What we see in fitness in general is like things hit waves, and I think BJJ MMA is probably halfway through a 10-year growth cycle. Like CrossFit is at the end of theirs, maybe trying to rejuvenate theirs. Which tells me honestly, probably in the next couple of years there will be a new one that replaces BJJ and MMA soon. But I think personally speaking, I think BJJ, MMA, and CrossFit are probably the two skill sets adults, training methodologies and skill sets human adults should learn for both practical and functional reasons. I think both of them are pretty awesome.
Do you practice BJJ?
No, so I'll tell you what, like I've always been attracted to UFC, but never really a fan. I got the opportunity to go to UFC 300 in Vegas with Jason Ackerman was hanging out with us, and one of the gym owners in Vegas is Joe Tepe took us, and I'm a fan now. Like that was fun and amazing, and it's been on my radar to go join a local gym, but they would be my fourth gym membership, and I don't know if I could swing that. First of all, I'm gonna have to time wise more than anything. And I'm kind of like swamped with work right now. So I'm trying to find the right opportunity to kind of like ease my way into becoming an MMA student.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
So
cool.
if you run an MMA gym in Las Vegas, I'm looking for you. Henderson, Las Vegas. I'm looking for a good studio.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny. I was Brandon Collin from Metabolic posted something, or he tagged something on LinkedIn and commented about what my thoughts on, BJJ being like the next CrossFit. And I was maybe remind me of a quote that my business partner at CrossFit had, Traver Boom, a long time ago. I don't know if he got it from somewhere else. He's like, CrossFit is MMA for guys who don't like to get hit in the face. And it's like, yeah,
or choked out every night. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really funny, man. I feel like I can't get away from a conversation in this podcast nowadays, probably because I bring it up. It's not like I can't get away from it. I can choose what we talk about here, but artificial intelligence, I'm slightly obsessed with it. I listen to a lot of podcasts about it. I'm always playing around with it. I'm testing different services. I'm trying to figure out how I can create value, especially for my podcast community at the Podcast Collective, and kind of, start to figure out some ways for us to really leverage it. But what is your, we're sitting here at the end of Q2 of 2024. Let's put a little bit of a timestamp on it. Advancements in AI this year. What's your take on them? The big question I want to ask you is, do you think our industry, and I'm going to say, keep it specific to what you do. Do you think the gym owner industry is ready for the changes that AI is bringing?
Yeah. Let's actually answer this in a way that will be evergreen and never date real quick. And then we'll go into the AI changes that just came about are crazy. They're going to be really impactful. And I don't think everyone really knows how to use them yet, but given time, it will probably change the industry. Okay, there. That little clip will age forever, so you'll be good.
Yeah, that's evergreen.
So the answer to so I was on a panel and we talked about AI really quickly, and my take is this: AI as it stands today is like if I gave you a 1 billion piece Lego set and said go nuts, right? Like I think it's too vast for people, generally speaking, who have like a wide array of problem sets to solve to like really leverage it effectively. And I would be willing to even wager that people probably waste time on AI as opposed to get time back right now. The proper way to think about AI and we can step into like how software plays, but like for you and me, is like I have 4 tasks in my day-to-day life where AI can help me. It might be research, writing newsletters, writing a blog, whatever it might be. I'll pause there and say, I think AI for marketing, sales, and human to human type situation. Marketing and sales specifically is going to be a fallacy, either a fallacy or we become robots. Like either we assimilate to AI or AI doesn't work, because marketing in general, it's one of those industries where it works until it doesn't work, and it doesn't work when everyone does it. So now that everyone's doing like AI blog posts and AI fucking automation, sales chats, the minute some human actually talks to me, I'll be like, okay, let's talk, because you're a human and I'm so sick of these robots. It's like the voice teleprompter things. You got to push one to get whatever, like nobody likes that. So I think AI for marketing, as it stands now, will not work as much as people think. You have to have a process, you have to have a reason to use it, and you have to deploy it within your process. Now, the good thing about that is like, that's what software does. It defines process, it buckets you into a funnel to do the process, and it spits out the result. So software, I think it's our job as software builders to actually figure out where AI fits into the processes that are already happening and layer it in, not build like a whole AI process, but layer it into what you do. And or now we can create new processes around things that there never was a process, because the AI actually makes that like super obvious to do. Right. So that's how I see AI. I don't think I think it's a dumb answer, because I don't think it's as impactful as everyone wants it to be today. And I think it's going to change the entire world the way that the internet and iPhones changed the world when they came about. So I'm on both ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah. How are you personally using AI?
I use AI quite a bit for research for my job. So a lot of my job is theoretical and dreaming. So I use it a lot for research, and it's less research like tell me how many gyms are in America. Like AI can't do that, but it's more like, I'm thinking about building this process for something. Give me some examples of how a company, like how this might work. So it's more free flowing. The more you ask AI to be precise about something, the more you're asking for trouble right now. So I use it for research. I'll use it for a lot of organizational things. Like I'm trying to make a decision about this, this, and this. Here are the pros, here are the cons. What are some things that I might not be thinking about? So again, it's not like choose for me. It's more like, what am I missing? Or, look across, the history and tell me, like, has a company made this decision before? What happened? You still have to follow that up and make sure it's true. So a lot of things like that I use it for. I'm using it to learn Spanish right now. That's
Really?
actually a cool use case. That's actually a really cool use case. So I'm using an app where it's an AI, you can do an AI conversation where it's just a free flowing conversation and you get to pick the topic, right? And then like the person on the other end will speak it, because they're using AI to like turn it into voice. And then it'll tell you how to respond with like the proper type of thing to respond with. And then based on your response, the AI will pick up and continue the conversation infinitely. So it's actually that's a pretty cool use of AI. So I think there's like a lot of very particular use cases of AI that are going to change everything. Pretty excited about all that.
Yeah. It's, I have GPT 4.0 open every day and I prompt it. I'm constantly, I think it's just like anything else. It's like when wearables start coming out and people were asking my take on, should fitness professionals be leveraging where I'm like, well, not yet, but you should get a wearable.
Mm-hmm.
You should use it. So maybe you can field some questions about it. And same with like this, just the generative AI is like, here's a little tidbit for the audience that I found out. I got this from my partner, Shannon Teranishi. If you're about to write something, let's say you want to write a SEO rich blog on this podcast, right? Which I do all the time. It's because I don't have time to write blogs, but having one that's SEO rich that drives traffic to my website, it's great, right? But I will say so I'm talking to GPT, you are Eric Malzone, you're born here, So you set the thing of tone of like who exactly they are. And then it'll actually like, okay, readjusted, it'll come back with, and now it's talking in my voice. And that's cool and creepy at the same time, because there is enough, of my content out there where it can kind of capture some of it. But giving it that context, you could say like, you are Mr. I don't know, you are Anthony Bourdain, right? And, you're talking in as if you, have a Spanish accent, You can be clearly defined on who you want this AI to be, and then it'll come out in that form. And that's kind of cool and fun and pretty time consuming. But stuff like that, like I never would have really figured out if I wasn't using it all the time. And that's just a small use case, right?
I think an interesting way to look at this, an important way to look at this, is like me and you were. Well, I'm gonna assume you were, is probably bad form, but we were kind of age when the internet came out. I don't know if you remember that. In 1993, I started college. In 1993, email started becoming a thing, but it was like you had to log into a terminal. You had to like use these weird commands. It wasn't like GUI. It was like all text. And I remember at the time I would email people and they'd be like, dude, just write me a letter. Like, don't make me do all of that. But now fast forward to today, it's like email is the staple of communication on the internet, one of them. And you can think AI is going to be like that. Like right now, people, it's like right now AI is like in the year 2001. Like everyone's building everything. Shit's getting funded. That's stupid. You know, it's like things are going to blow up. Things are, you know, it's going to be very rocky, but eventually it's going to smooth out. There's going to be some really like fine-tuned winners, and what like the new Amazon's going to get built, and the new Google's going to get built. Like the winners are going to figure it out, and then in 10 years, they're going to be like, how do we live without this? But right now, it's like this crazy Wild West. But this is not like crypto and NFTs are what they are, and they've actually, you know, taken some hold. But this is more like the internet popping or the advent of the car. Like this will change the shape of history. So maybe create Skynet, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just get back to it's funny. I remember my first experience with email. I was like 1996. I was in college. My brother was doing research in the Antarctic. And for me to write a letter to him and get to him, it's just huge. It's 2 weeks, right? Maybe at best. And then all of a sudden, like we were emailing, like I would go to the computer lab at Boston College, and all of a sudden I would have an email like, whoa. And then I would write one back. And then like the next day I would have another one. I'm like, this is what? Right. And now now I can just call someone in the Antarctic, which is crazy. Like if there's no way you could do that now. So just the speed at which it's all accelerating is pretty wild. One last topic, if you got time, Dan. I don't know if we have 10 more minutes at all, but you know, you guys raised a successful Series A couple of years back. You know, as a founder nowadays, you know, fundraising is pretty fundamental to what people do. There's a lot of probably entrepreneurs or founders who are listening to this as well. You know, specifically to like private equity. What are the warning signs or things that people should be aware of if they're looking to approach private equity to be a partner in their business?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Private equity won't get involved until you've hit a certain maturity level. So most people, unless you've built like $100 million business or a $50 million business, you won't be messing around with private equity folks. They're at a different level, and their objectives and direction of doing stuff is completely different. So let's I guess partition that question. So for entrepreneurs listening to this, we're looking to get funded. You're probably looking more for, you know, seed, pre-seed, or, you know, venture capital type people who are basically, I didn't know this when I started, but it's like the venture people are looking to prove a business. Then there's a segment called growth equity, which sits between private equity and venture, which is looking to grow a business. And then private equity is looking to mature and or cash out or go public of a business. So once you get in the private equity realm, and this is where I think all the problems are, especially in fitness, it's like private equity's only focus is to make money. And kind of like the conversation we had earlier, like because that is their focus, and they have set timelines on returning funds. Like the instrumentation for private equity fund in general is we raise a whole bunch of money from investors and we're going to return it in 7 years. So we got to deploy a whole bunch of money in year one. And then in the next 6 years, we got to figure out how to like grow the business to a point where we can get a 3x return over 7 years. Like that's kind of the, you know, the mechanics of PE. And that 7 years is what creates all of the weird incentive misalignments between the business, the customers, and the investors. Because once you get into year 3 and 4, it's just like, okay, foot on the gas, make the money, buy some other companies, roll up some things, raise the prices, do whatever you can, because we've got to start gearing up to sell this thing. So I think that's where private equity, in my opinion, goes wrong and has problems, because it is built in the interests of the investors only. And so I always warn people, when you're doing business with a company, look who's behind them and look who's investing in them. What is their timelines? What is their philosophy? You know, how do they approach doing this? The people I choose to get involved with in terms of investors have to be customer first. They have to believe in the core tenets of You make money by delivering customer value, not the other way around. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good insights. And it's funny, I've never started a company where I needed to raise funds. It's always been bootstrap style companies. So I think just by interviewing people on this podcast and talking to so many founders and entrepreneurs, I've learned so much, but I still know so very little about the investment, landscape of where to start. I know the major categories, and I know I'm sure I'm not alone, basically. For people listening to this who are like, "Oh, I didn't know there was a difference between growth equity and private equity." So it's interesting, man. Yeah, it all makes a lot of sense. I think you and I have talked offline about some founders and CEOs of companies in our industry who feel the same way about PE and cautionary tales, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's P. In my opinion, PE is problematic in our space. So it is, if you look across companies and you can tell when somebody is focused only on making money. We're raising rates, we're cutting customer support, we're not building more product. Like, product is expensive to build in software. So if they're not really building product and they're raising rates, it's like you can tell probably right away that they're only in. And to me, the problem is this: like, if their whole goal is to sell the company, they're finding a bag holder. Like, they don't care what happens to all of the clients eventually, because it's like someone else's problem. And you can see how that type of an arrangement and mindset just creates so infinite number of problems, not only for like how they go about doing their business, but all of the downstream bag hold, like all the customers become the bag holders, because like, oh great, well now someone else owns us, and like, what do they think? What is their goal? So I don't know. I strongly advise, especially gym owners, like, look at the software you're using, look at the companies you're working with, and watch out for PE. Which is interesting
Yeah,
because we just talked about this earlier, like CrossFit is PE owned. And I do think, like, in their first couple of years of being PE owned, they were going about it all backwards. But that's where the shift in what they're saying, the fact that they're worried about gyms making more money and customer value, to me is the big shift that I'm interested to see play out. So not all PE is bad. Let's just put it there. Oh, one
yeah,
more thing. Let
yeah.
me tell you that.
Awesome, man.
Oh, one more quick
Yeah,
thing. You know
please.
how I said, like, if you speak your truth, you self-select away from the future problems of people that don't get witness. I'm setting myself up so no private equity will ever buy us, because I will never want to work for a private equity company and be trying to earn out on that. So I just burn those boats.
Yeah, you sure did, man. Well done. Well, hey, Dan, we covered a lot of ground today. I really appreciate it. I mean, you're a very diverse opportunity guest to talk about a lot of stuff with you. So, yeah, man. Last question, as always, is what is a challenge that you're facing right now that our industry can help you with? In other words, what would you like to hear from people about if they're going to reach out to you after listening to this?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I'm so immersed in like the problems that I'm facing in my company. Let's see. I need to be better at networking. I need to be better at understanding what the next stages of a CEO look like, and how do you build teams. I need to be better at operational efficiency and I'm a dreamer, not a great operator. Those are some of my weaknesses. So if there's anyone listening who's like really good at any of those things, like, love to talk to you.
Yeah, man. Awesome. And Dan, where do people go?
Pushpress.com for the company. My Instagram, I try and post daily little business tidbits and mindset advice things, which I'm pretty proud of and I like doing. It's fun. Lets me interact with customers as well, and people out there. That's at Danielson, like the Karate Kid guy. DANIELSAN.
Awesome. And there's also pushpress.com/Dan, which I know and
Oh,
bookmarked.
that's right. I missed that softball.
Yeah. Oh, right on. Well, Dan, always a pleasure, brother. Go forth and keep CEOing, and we'll be in touch. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Uyemura.
Thank you. See ya.
Awesome, dude. Let me make sure this all gets uploaded.